Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the What Works X Back to School campaign series. We're very pleased that you're here with us at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues getting our friends in from across in the UK. What we'd like you to do is log on to www.menti.com, please. And the Menti code is 685559. There's an interesting question for you to attempt. And we'd love to hear your views on what do you feel, what are your current feeling, what are you feeling like when it's time to come back to school? What are your thoughts? So the Menti code 685559 and www.menti.com. All right, we've got an honest answer coming right up front, mixed feelings. I was going to announce a prize for the first one in. Excited and yet nervous. Here we know what that feels like. Apprehensive. Anxious and uncertain. So the common words, I think if this was on a Wordle, it would have shown excited very large and anxious very large. I think those are the two key words coming out over and over again. Organized chaos, I love that. Concerned as to how to implement all the new protocols. Exciting. Mixed. We'll give this another 30 seconds to get responses in. So I presume these are teachers who are writing in. If you're not a teacher, and if you're a principal, perhaps you put a little P at the end so we know you're a principal who's writing that. Overwhelmed by the amount of work that needs to be done and the short notice we're being given. All right. Waiting to be part of the action. I think that's the general feeling that we've waited so long. It's like the baby's ready to pop out, right? 9 months, and it seems like 9 months, and now it's time to get back. So I'm just wondering, these look like teacher responses. If you're a principal, if you're a parent, if you're a student, if you're a member of the senior leadership team, just somehow indicate who you are, not by name, but by profession. All right, I think we've got enough comments in. Thank you for being so candid and giving a true to self response. Thank you, Nada, if we can stop. Yeah, thank you very much. Those were really, I think, some powerful messages in there because that's how we're all feeling. And, with the current buzz around the reopening of schools, I think this is a timely webinar. It's the first session of the What Works Back to School campaign. And I think that, I'm not sure if you've joined out of curiosity or a genuine urge to listen to educators and psychologists, but I hope there will be some takeaways for everyone. I, for one, am definitely keeping my ear to the ground, ready to learn from colleagues and to listen to the questions. I think your questions on the Q&A are going to be very insightful. So we're hoping that you're really going to challenge us and keep us engaged. And let's make this a meaningful 55 minutes that we will be together. I'm going to now request my colleagues to introduce themselves before we plunge straight into the Q&A. Sadia, would you introduce yourself, please? You are muted, Sadia.
Assalamualaikum and very good evening, everyone. I am Sadia. I am from Pakistan. I am currently working as principal of Kerala Public School. I am associated with the school from last few months. Before that, I was working in UAE with one of the schools in Abu Dhabi, and I worked there as a head for almost 8 years. And currently, I am in Pakistan. And thank you very much, KHDA, for giving us this opportunity today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadia. Over to you, Berna.
Hi everybody, I'm Berna Bauer. I'm currently residing in the UK. I am head of school in a junior school in Sherfield on Loddon in Hook. I lived in Dubai for 7 years working as an inclusion manager, SENCO, director of inclusion, and my great passion is getting our kids back into school as safely and as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Berna. I'm sure a lot of people who are going to listen very closely to what you have to share. And Bassam.
Hi, I'm Bassam Dia. I'm a specialist psychiatrist working at Rashid Hospital in Dubai. I'm Iraqi, but been here in Rashid Hospital like this is my 7th year. I've been also like volunteer in like this COVID-19 pandemic as like psychiatrist there. And last but not least, I'm a father and my son goes to school. So like I have the other side point of view, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bassam. And it's not every day we get to hear from somebody at the heart of Dubai Health Authority's Command and Control Center, and you've been there. So you're literally wearing two hats, as I am wearing. I realize I haven't introduced myself. I am Nargis Kambata, the principal of GEMS Modern Academy and Vice President Education at GEMS Education. It's a pleasure to be here and welcome everyone. Like we said, these are exciting times. These are times to be excited and nervous. And I think when you're excited and nervous, it brings out the best in you. No one really prepared us for this. I think as a colleague of mine, shared recently, I don't think we've ever got that one question wrong by so many people. 5 years ago, if someone asked you, where would you be? Where do you imagine yourself 5 years from now? Who would have said we'd be in the midst of a pandemic? None of us really imagined this. But I think we're all really making the most of what the situation is throwing at us. This is what we're training our children for day in and day out. And now it's come back to us. And we've got to be adaptive, and we've got to be reactive, and we've got to be, actually predictive. And so with that, I'd like to throw the first question at the panel. This question is about how have we coped so far. You'll see the questions have been constructed, to really bring us to the point where we are today. And the COVID-19 impact on teaching and learning over the last few months has been a great learning experience for educators, and the situation has been a great teacher. So I'd really like us to ponder over what really has been the impact of learning and teaching over the last few months. What are our learnings from there?
If I can jump in there, as many of you know, and I'm sure you've read in the newspapers and seen on TV, that the schools in the UK, we were on lockdown and we were closed, but we weren't really closed because we had so many key worker children still in school every single day, which meant that our parents who worked for the NHS or who works in the front line of providing food and water and sanitation and those things, they still had to go to work, which meant that we had to keep our schools open. And how we have coped with that is we had skeleton staff that were supported and had PPE and things like that, working with these small group children in a social bubble. But we also had to very quickly learn here in the UK how to teach online, which is something that we don't really do. We don't use Google Classrooms. It's very much a situation where you teach in front of the children, to the children, the national curriculum or the IB or whichever curriculum. So very quickly we had to adapt the way we taught and the way we learned. And I have to say, it's a lot more work. All of my teachers said it's a lot more work to teach online than it is to actually have the children in front of you. The other thing is suddenly all of the teachers had to be IT experts here in the UK because the children are struggling, the parents are struggling, and what do? You as a teacher at 11 at night are still supporting these parents and supporting the sheets. What we did at our school for the primary children is we made a pack for every single child, a 6-week pack with everything they needed, copied, photocopied, and sent home with the children. So we could then teach and say, go to that pack, go to that lesson, that page. This is what it looks like. This is the work we're doing today. But we were in the fortunate position of doing that. Once the schools opened, it changed the game again because we had children who didn't come back to school. So we had to teach online while still teaching these children in front of us. So all in all, I think we coped best we could, but it wasn't easy and we made loads of mistakes. And I know we're going to talk about what we learned through this process, and then I'll mention some of those things, but that's what we did here, trying to cope with the sudden onslaught of we're closing. We heard the Tuesday that we were closing the Friday, so we didn't even have lots of time to prepare.
Thank you so much, Berna. And I am conscious that we have an audience from across the globe, and that's why we're bringing in country perspectives as well. I'm sure a lot of teachers have listened very closely when you said you taught online and face-to-face, and that is what I think teachers in the UAE are going to experience for the first time, really, teaching face-to-face and online. So could you talk a little bit more about that experience, Berna?
So what we did was we had our children who came back into school in a social bubble of about 18 pupils, and every single child had a Chromebook issued to them if they didn't have their own device. And the teacher that stayed with those children was either a math specialist, an English specialist, or a science specialist. Now in primary, we're all those things, we have to be. And the teacher would teach the group that she has, but then Zoom or Google Classroom, the children who are in the other classrooms or who are at home. So the lesson was live streamed to the other pupils who weren't in her group. And then when her group had, and so let's say for instance, as the math specialist, I taught math to my group and it was streamed to the other classes and the children at home. When they then had English, the English specialist who was in another social bubble in another classroom, she would teach her class and that would be streamed to my class, and I would facilitate the learning in my group, as with the science specialist, as with the history specialist, and as with the parents at home. So it was almost like live broadcasting what we were doing in lessons while we were doing it. The trickiest thing of it was that the pupils in the other classes couldn't really ask us questions. So where a child could ask, but how do I do this multiplication sum if I'm in the room? It's very tricky when you have an English specialist who's there and can't really answer the question always. So that was a bit tricky. So we did have a Q&A at the end.
Right. I think we're going to come back to this because a lot of listeners will be very keyed in and will be listening closely to that experience, because that's what we're going to have here. But if I could quickly bring in Sadia, please, to talk about her experience in Karachi.
It was difficult. It was difficult, and we faced the same problem, same like any other country in the world. But the schools in Pakistan, they started e-learning in the month of March, and I'm so proud that majority of the school, 99% of the school, they have completed their session through online, through like e-learning, and they have completed the session very well, despite of having all the problems, same like any other country. Though we are, undeveloped country, and we had a lot of problems, and that created a lot of anxiety in teachers and students. But alhamdulillah, it went well, and we did well, majority of the schools. So the session is completed, and inshallah, hoping for the best in the coming academic session.
So your experience has been mainly the online learning, right? You've not had that what Berna talked about, the face-to-face as well as the beaming back into the bubbles. You've not had that experience.
No.
Right, wonderful. And Bassam, from a parent's perspective, you've been in the UAE. How old is your son?
He's 4 years old, so he's still KG. So, but still, honestly, he's KG2 now. It was different because for us, like putting him in KG was about interaction, like developing social skills, language, and so. And then he had to stay home and have this online classes, and all his interactions with his mother or relatives maximum. So that was like total different experience, honestly. Like what we used to teach people that, oh, avoid like electronics, let the children play, go out, and so. And now we just advise them to stay home.
Yeah, absolutely. And did that have an impact on the children? Suddenly, you know, the parents had changed what they were saying. Instead of saying stay away from your device, a lot of parents, you know, there was no alternative. So did that have, you know, first it's a contradiction to what they've been hearing. And secondly, what kind of impact from a psychologist's perspective do you think that had?
Yeah, honestly, that's the thing, because in my clinic, I receive lots of adults. So like the increasing number of parents that I received in the past period, well, let's say that was noticeable. Even with like many parents, they were like a bit overwhelmed with this change. Other than handling the changes that's going on with them, like with their jobs, with like the whole like physical situation, they're worried about the health of their children. So now they have the responsibility of taking care of the like homework, the teaching, and so. And some weren't ready for that, honestly. So the problem, they were seeing the whole situation, like it's not like they're not seeing step by step. They were seeing like the whole stairway, and like how will we do all that? No, that's the idea.
It's called being thrown at the deep end. That's what happened to everybody. You were thrown at the deep end. But yeah. I picked up something else that you said, Bassam, and I want to probe that a little further. You said that your son sat with his mother. Why not with his father?
Because I was in isolation, because first liner, so I was away from them for 3 months. And that's another thing. Yeah. So I was like in contact with him only by Zoom or by like these cameras. So that was even hard on me and him too.
Yeah, and there are a number of parents who have been in the front line. And so what would your advice to those parents be who've been in the front line and who are away from their children? You know, it's having an impact on the children, on the spouse. What would your advice to those parents be?
Like, that's the thing. Like, I had a hard question from my son is like, do you like prefer your job over me? Or like, why aren't you coming anymore? Like, why, like things like that. So that was hard on me, and I had to explain all like that's my job, like to show him like pictures that I'm like wearing all this, I'm trying to help, like this is like what we do. You know, like I don't want to like scare him with like over informing him, but like because children are smarter than what like many people think, is they just have less experience. They have like, we have the same brains, just they don't have experience in life. So that was like how to deal with it, honestly. And even when I went back home, it was hard. Like he kept checking, like every night he goes to sleep, are you leaving or staying home? Well, yeah. So I had to take like each day, like day by its own, and like this is it. Like finish this week, then like finish another week, and go on.
So if there were 2 bits of advice that you've got to give parents, because I'm sure our principals will, and they've had that experience too, and including teachers, where they've seen, you know, the parents of their children have been on the front line. And so 2 pieces of advice, what should they be telling the children in their class? I have a kindergarten child, let's say in my class. What should I be telling the child?
We have to explain, like in very simple words, explain what's happening, explain risks to them. Like, because like even like we're going back to school, like how the changes of wearing masks, and so that's by itself like this explanation. Then like I think for the parents, like need regular like communication. That's like the main key. It's like not to deal with the child like they're in a different room and we're like dealing with this situation. No, they're like, they see that on us already. if we are stressed, we're worried, they become, because they, like we are their safety. We are like that's the basic thing. After the physical needs, they need to feel secure and safe and loved. And that's what we need. Even if there's no like direct physical contact with the parents, they need to have like regular communication, at least what we call is quality time. Like, so like what I try to do is like have a phone, like video call, even if it's short, but it's focused, like focused on my son, to listen to him and listen to me. And so
well, that's a really good point, actually, that if they can't be with them, to at least beam in for 10 minutes and have that video call if they can't meet them. That's really useful. Thank you. And I think the kindergarten teachers in the UAE really need, us to doff their hats at them, because and talking from the UAE perspective, I do know that a lot of kindergarten teachers, parents were very, very reluctant, and they got the maximum pushback. What is this online learning? Why should and I'm spending so much time with my child. But the parents who've embraced that positively, they've been the ones who really benefited the most. And truly, the kindergarten teachers have adapted their timings to suit parents' timings. They've worked over the weekends. They've worked at different times. So it's been quite an amazing experience. And just to talk about the impact on teaching and learning over the last few months, how have we coped? I think the initial shock was, as Berna said, you literally overnight had to transform. So the mistake I think we all made is we tried to transfer our classroom, our physical environment online. We tried to do everything that we were doing in the classroom online. And very quickly our teachers learned, no, that's not a good thing to do. That's definitely not going to work. So you had to reimagine your pedagogical approach. You really had to rethink it. And I think our teachers were so agile and so adaptive that literally every week they were changing. At the end of 4 weeks, they said, our parents need to know what to do. So the kindergarten teachers were settling in trackers. They had to create and imagine settling in trackers. They had to, the middle and senior school had to report to parents, send some sort of update to parents. They had to think about, okay, well, how am I going to do assessment? You have to trust your students. There was no proctored assessment. So how am I going to evaluate? How do I know, that the student really knows? And so you upped the ante and went from a low end of Bloom's to the high end of Bloom's, and you started asking questions that they couldn't Google and they couldn't figure out and they wouldn't find easily in their textbook. And so, to stay one step ahead of the game. But the best part of it is, if you got stuck with technology, who helped you? The students.
That's right.
And
the
students, the teachers had, online monitors. I forget what they were called. Different schools call them different things, but it was literally the vanguards. The students were the vanguards. If somebody misbehaved, it was the students who were the check and balance for them. And those were some of the amazing things that came out of what we were doing. So I'm going to move on to the next question on how are we preparing. Now, we've all received protocols and guidelines. All of our countries, wherever we are, by now we've received protocols and guidelines on how to prepare for school reopening. And this summer, we've had no holiday. My out of office message says I'm on a working holiday. I mean, but that's the reality. And so we've been all working and reworking and reworking our plans. So I just wanted to know, so what are some of the key considerations around what we've been planning? We've all had the first iteration, the second iteration. The UAE government has been brilliant. I mean, they've just been so brilliant, not only at managing the the COVID situation, but even in terms of education, in terms of giving guidelines and making sure that schools are ready. So we're supposed to send in our forms, fill in the forms, and send them in. What is the school reopening plan? And then you get a feedback and say, let's do it, you need to adapt this slightly, or yes, your plan has been approved, but this is what we recommend. So those things have been absolutely brilliant. Now, my question is, what are some of the key considerations around which we're basing our planning for school reopening? Berna, I know your perspective will be slightly different, but because you've already reopened, but we'd love to hear from you, based on the protocols and guidelines that you received, what were some of the key considerations?
Well, I can honestly say that the UAE government was brilliant in the things that I've seen from colleagues and old work friends and how well they structured the planning, the phased in planning. The UK is slightly different because there were general guidelines about social bubbles and what this looks like, but there's not really as many guidelines and as straightforward guidelines. It's almost like somebody said to me the other day, our Prime Minister said the other day, please go out but stay in if you can. It's one of those things. It's very, very ambiguous. It depends on how you see it. But what we did, one of the biggest things that we did was we tried to keep the bubbles separate and have each bubble have their own toilets, have their own entrance, have their own exit. We have a 30-minute cleaning schedule. And I have to say the children and teachers are so resilient. They start cleaning themselves. You know, they just start tidying up and spraying. Here in the UK, they dismissed the 2 meter meters separation and distance rule for primary schools. So as long as you're in the same bubble, children are obviously discouraged from touching each other and touching each other's things. So what we did was we asked each pupil to bring in a pillowcase, because the pillowcase has that slip at the top which you can just hang over your chair. So you put all your stuff in your pillowcase, you hang it over your chair. At the end of the day, you take your pillowcase, you go home. Tomorrow you come in with a clean pillowcase. So no 2 days with the same pillowcase. One of the other things we also did, we said no school clothes, no school uniform. Every child came in with home clothes because obviously you have multiple sets of those. So it makes more sense instead of trying to wash your school wear every single day for the next day. We didn't, some of the teachers, we made it optional to wear protective equipment. And what we did there was we said to teachers, if you are going to wear protective equipment like a face mask or those things, because it's very hard for a reception age child of 4.5 to go into school and suddenly their teacher has a face mask on. And so we said, if you are doing this, please make sure it's a child-friendly one. So having lovely pictures on it, and do a Zoom call beforehand with your class and announce, this is what I'm going to look like when we come back in. And that was one of the biggest things we did, was we had constant face-to-face online communication with parents. We had a weekly call. I had a weekly call with all my primary parents to say, this is how it's been going. What have you been experiencing? I also have what is called Tea with Ms. B with every year group. So every year group once a week has 30 minutes with me. We're all online, we're having a cup of tea, and the children then talk to me about their experience, because I think the one thing that we easily forget is that the isolation more than anything else to the children is what is going to be the hardest thing. We can always learn again next year. We can always learn what we didn't learn this year. But if a child is isolated, if a child is lonely, if a child feels like they have no connection, that's where the damage is done. So we did a lot of work on that, a lot of social stories about what does COVID-19 mean? What does this mean for you? What does this mean for us? What does it mean for the community? And most of all, what does it mean for your friends? So we had loads of online, we still have loads of online tea parties for the girls, and we have a boys band for the boys, and that was one part of it. The other part of it is also making things fun, because yes, and I'm not trying to say that COVID-19 is not a serious thing, because it is, but children learn when they are happy. Children learn when they have fun. So what we did was we have dress up days. So we have pirate days, we have princess days, we have different days where everybody can have a strange hairdo and things like that, just to make sure that the children buy into the experience as much as into the learning. Another thing that we had to do a lot of work on was our children of determination, because there's a lot of things that happens around special needs and the educational needs of children who already have a communication problem or a reading problem or a missing piece somewhere in their puzzle. And a lot of the work that we did was preparing those more vulnerable children and their parents for what the reintroduction would look like. So the first week, hand on heart, all we did was we reintroduced children back into school, talking about the fears, had lots of circle time about things that might happen, go wrong. And hand on heart, we haven't had a single case of COVID-19 in our whole school, and we opened the school for everybody but 6. So
that's absolutely fabulous. Berna, there are going to be a lot of people asking to have tea with Miss B, for sure, for sure. But you know, some of the things I picked up, and I really want to reiterate this, was your pillow idea. I thought was fabulous. So, you know, you bring your pillow cover from absolutely fabulous. The Zoom call prior to the event was amazing. I'm sure the fun days, etc., which you know, which a lot of people will be doing. You know, you make me almost want to be a student in your school. Because you really thought this through very, very well. And I'm going to ask Basam to pick up some of the psychological aspects of children coming back to school from a psychologist's perspective. What do you think some of the things you know, teachers should be thinking about? What do you think we should be preparing for? You're on mute, Basam. You're on mute.
Okay. So the thing is, it's as Ms. Berna said, like just the change. It's not as before. Like we already heard it before. Like we can't go back to our normal life. No, it's not going back to normal life. We move on. That's how we do it. Like that's a human nature. We adapt. We adapt to change. Children can do that. The thing is the worry is the parents, to be honest, because they see the worry, they see they follow us, they copy us. Going back to school, mainly, let's say, other than the physical concern, like we don't want them to be sick, we want them to be healthy. The second thing is our staff, our teachers. If we can't take care of our staff, they can't take care of the children. So we need that, we can regularly assessing ourselves. It's not like we just keep going on with the stress. No, we should know, we reached the limit. We're burnt, there's burnout, there's stress. We need to to see these spots and seek help. Start with simple things, by support from family, colleagues, friends. When it comes to children, they can't do that that assessment for themselves. They can't tell they are stressed or they are feeling low or anxious. So that part becomes in the hands of the parents and the teachers to see any change in the behavior. And I think teachers are doing a brilliant job with that, because I witnessed that already with my son in school, that they do notice simple changes in the children's behaviors, and they inform the parents. So then there comes the big part, the parents at home, how to handle that stress. I don't know, it's not easy, but as we said, take it step by step.
Thank you so much, Basam. So I'm just repeating some of the things that that kind of rang a bell, and struck a chord with me. I think your focus is that children need to feel safe, and so that's really a key consideration. Yeah. And also, if you take care of your staff, they take care of the kids. I think that was really powerful. And we take that for granted. We take that, because they're adults, they will take care of themselves, but they don't. So look out for each other, really. Also, I think, regular assessment. Now, that for me as a principal was a real eye-opener. Do we really assess do we know our reality? We kind of make a plan and then we all work towards it, but do we give ourselves the permission to pause? Do we give ourselves the permission to really take stock and say, we're on track, but how are we doing? So I think those are really, really important things. And the other thing you said which struck me was, the parents back home, especially if they're homemakers, and they're at home constantly worrying about their children or about their spouse, they need to be brought into the equation as well, because otherwise they're going to transmit their anxiety to the children, and the children will come back. So everything that you do will be undone. So how do you support parents to support children to very, very nice. Thank you so much, Basam. And Sadia, over to you now for, I thought we lost you for a bit. Did you log out and log back in?
No, actually there was a electricity power failure, one of the problems our teachers were facing in the last few months. So I faced the same problem. If I'll talk about Pakistan, we have already received the date from the ministry, from the government, that from the 15th of September, schools will be open physically. But they are again going to review the situation in the first week of September, and then it will be finalized whether the schools can be opened physically or not. But we have received the guidelines from the government of Pakistan, and there are two parts of that guideline. One says that what we need to do before the schools will be open and what we need to do after the schools will be open. Like before the schools will be open, we need to make sure that the school is, we are ready for the students in the school, and parents are engaged. They know what school is safe for their children or not. We need to make sure that the big number of students in Pakistan, especially, they are coming through the school transport, through the school buses. So the buses are clean or sanitized, or all these things. And what we need to do after the schools will be open is the most important thing is that there will be no co-curricular activities, no physical trainings, plus no workshops in the school. We can't conduct anything during this COVID-19 pandemic period. Plus, the schools who are having a big number of students, they need to make sure that they have multiple gates for entrance and exit just to avoid the crowd. So there are a few things which we have received as a school, and we have to make sure that we are ready. And I think the majority of the schools in Pakistan, we are ready. And we, as you said, we don't have holidays, we have working holidays. But we are ready, hopefully, inshallah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sadia. And I really like the before and after, because it puts things in perspective. In order to get the after right, you've got to get the before right. And so that link was really nicely thought through. I think in Dubai and in UAE, I think health and safety, of course, is one of the key considerations, and a lot of emphasis is being given on, what happens if a child comes in with high temperatures. So I think our schools are gearing up for having temperature checks before they enter the bus, and we're actually advising our parents, please invest in a good thermometer, so you can check your child's temperature before your child leaves. And then when the child gets into the bus, obviously we are social distancing in the bus as well, so their buses are operating at 50% capacity. If the temperature is more than 37.5, the child is not allowed entry into the school. If the child develops a fever when they come to the school, I'm sure most schools have invested in thermal imaging cameras, and the students, once they're identified as having 37.5, there's a holding room. You put the child there. I'm just talking about the medical aspect because parents are worried, and if there are any parents listening in, I think you need to know that schools have nailed it, and KHD is not rested until schools have nailed it. The governing authorities here are really on our case, and rightly so. I mean, you can't be too cautious. So there are holding rooms, and if the temperature persists, then the child is taken into an isolation room, and there are guidelines given around isolation rooms, where then the child is straight off. Parents are called, and if there are COVID-like symptoms, then there's a protocol to be followed. So I think health and safety is one aspect of it, but the other big aspect is the well-being aspect. And I think a lot of, you rightly said, Basam and Sadia, children are worried, even children are worried about coming to school. So what are they anxious about? And like Berna's tea with Ms. B, what are the occasions or what are the situations that we have which will allow children to talk? So I think all schools are planning a really good back to school program. And the back to school program will take into consideration, opportunities for children to talk about their fears and their anxieties, to drill protocols of health and safety and sanitization, and make them understand why is it important to be in their bubble, and why a cross flow is not to be encouraged. If they understand it, they know, and they will implement it. If they're told do it, you'll get a lot of the defiant ones. No one's going to know. I'm just going to pull my mask down now. And the other thing is, I think, how will children stay with their masks on for so long? and so when they go out for PE, the PE department has had to rethink its whole syllabus, its whole curriculum, because you can't do what you were doing earlier, and so they're looking more at a skill-based curriculum, and yet how the children can be engaged, and yet they are developing the milestones. And I think for the parents who are worried about sending their children back to school, I think, and any doctor will tell you this, that it's good to build your immunity, really, and as a preparation for school, we're telling our parents, please take your children, let them wear their masks, let them go out for walks, let them cycle, let them practice social distancing, but don't keep them cooped up in the house, right? It's not healthy. It's for their mental well-being. And so mental well-being, I think, is getting a really big focus in all of our schools in the UAE, because if our children are mentally sound, and because psychologists are predicting, Dr. Bassam, you might know that, that years from now, the impact of what is happening will be felt, and children learn through through a social construct, and if we don't allow that, what are we even attempting here? And to the parents who are worried about sending their children, I would say ask your school, grill your school about the protocols in place. But once you're satisfied, don't transmit your anxiety to the children. Let them be free, let them come to school and enjoy what they're meant to be enjoying. Of course, it'll be a different school they're coming back to. The edifice is the same, the school is the structure is the same, but the protocols will be slightly different, and they'll adapt. And they'll adjust, and they learn to have fun, and they learn to to interact and have their wonderful youthful experiences. So with that, I'm going to move on to my next question, really, and that is, how are we preparing every stakeholder? What sort of communication methods are we using? How are we going to ensure that all of our stakeholders, whether it's children, whether it's teachers, whether it's parents, whether it is a board of governors, whether it's even stakeholders, even the development authority, the guiding authority, what sort of communication methods are we employing? What are we, and more importantly, what is the message? What are we communicating? So Berna, I really liked your idea of zooming in beforehand. I think that's a very important aspect, isn't it? Getting the children to identify with you and knowing what you're going to look like and what the protocols are going to be. So you always start the discussion, so back to you.
So I totally agree with you. It's such an important part of it, is making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on, what the expectation is, because I always say nothing should ever be a surprise. Not on a report card and not on the back to school bus. Nothing should be a surprise. So what we did was we did lots of consultation with our staff. We felt it was important, as Dr. Bassam said, to look after the staff. So we had lots of consultation with the staff. And first what we did was we allayed their fears. And then we said to them, okay, you guys come back to us if there's anything that you are worried about. If you have a better idea, this is the plan. But if you have a better idea, talk to us about it. After we had those consultations, we spoke to the children. We spoke about what the classroom would look like. We took them on classroom tours with an iPad, showed them what the teacher would look like, where their seats will be. Obviously, we had to move some cloths around to make sure that everybody has their own entrance. And then we spoke to the parents and we explained the whole plan to the parents. And then we said, if anybody has any other fears or worries, please stay on the call and then get back to us. We also spoke to them about that protocol should a child have any fever. Now, a 4-year-old gets a fever when you look funny at him. They get fever for everything. So what we did was we have an isolation room, and a child has a fever, they go to the isolation room, parents are called in, and the child goes home. In our policy, we did have the COVID-19 test. So if you present with a fever, you have to go for the COVID-19 test. Once the test results come back, the child is allowed back into school from the next day. If the test is positive, by the grace of God, that has not happened yet, then we shut down the whole bubble, which means that all of those children would not come back into school. And these were the protocols we spoke to parents about, but I only made one promise. I said that if I send home a child for any reason whatsoever, I will personally phone every single parent in that bubble and share the news myself. Because you know how these WhatsApp groups work. They create so much fear and anxiety. So In the 2 incidences where I did send a year 1 child home because of fever, I phoned every single parent and they were really appreciative. And then when the test came back negative, I phoned every parent again. And that was the only promise I made. And I said, if I have to keep my promises on the small things, so you trust us in the big things. And I think that was the most important bit, because the parents went with us every step of the way. We had Zoom calls, we had private phone calls, we sent out letters, we sent out plans, we even sent out our risk assessment forms to the parents. Because they moved with us the whole time, there was lots of trust built. So when we actually opened on the 1st of June, as I said, only 6 children didn't come back and they had medical reasons for not coming back, which I think is a great success. But it is about building that trust and making sure that every stakeholder, even the governing body, everybody is involved in that process all along the way. And if anybody says, wait, I'm not sure of this, then we stop the train, we look at it, we make another plan, and we continue after that.
Great, and I see a question for you in the chat box, Bernard. Says, can we ask Ms. B to describe the children's state of mind and feelings when they came back to school and discuss how our team were able to help them transition back effectively? So if you'd like to take that question now. And,
absolutely. So loads of the children were very scared when they came back the first day. So what we did was, even that first week, we had a staggered start of our day. So when the year 1s, for instance, came, it was only the year 1s who entered the car park. I stood outside, greeted every child personally, greeted every parent, and then they went in. The teacher waited outside, so no parent entered the buildings. The teacher waited outside, took her children with her to her classroom, and we did lots of circle time about COVID-19, what it looks like. Another thing we had to do was we had to look at grief counseling. So should somebody have a parent or a grandparent who doesn't live with them or is far away, who has passed away, whether it's COVID-19 related or not, in the children's mind it was all the same thing. So we did a lot of grief counseling with the group as well, because you know how it is. If somebody passed away, you want to talk about it. If you're little, you want to tell somebody, my granny passed away. So we did lots of that, but we also then took them step by step. So we explained every single morning, this is what the plan looks like today. And I have to say, by the 2nd, 3rd day, they were settled like nothing else. They were all calm. We had one child who was still very, very anxious. So every morning, this child would stand, they would come a little bit early, and this child would stand with me, and we would talk through the day, and we would look at it. And then later on the day, I would check in with this child because she was so anxious. But we did lots of social stories as well with our children beforehand as a circle time activity through the teachers. I hope that answers the question.
I think you have, and I'm mindful of time, but I'm going to ask you one more question that's in the chat box, and I think I'm going to ask it to you because you're the only one who's had the experience of welcoming the children back. And so Manju wants to know, how will we ensure safe social distance greetings, especially among pre-primary and primary, and how do we ensure enjoyable learning experiences through? I think let's take the first half of the question. How do we ensure safe social distancing greetings, especially for pre-primary?
So we practiced that quite a bit on our Zoom teaching, where we had we had about 6 different ones. So you have a Bluetooth high five, which means it has to be 2 meters apart. You had a little dance, so you do a silly dance 2 meters apart. We had the fist bump in the air, that was also like the Bluetooth high five. We also have across the room, hey ho, hey ho. So the one child would say hey ho and the other child would say hey ho. And that would be a greeting. We explained to the children beforehand that we cannot touch each other, we cannot hug. I know we all sometimes just need a hug, but that wouldn't be allowed. So we practiced those 6 beforehand in circle time, even before the 1st of June. So when they came back, we also asked parents to practice it with the children. They had that down to a T.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Berna. Sadia, would you like to share, your thoughts on what you are doing?
Schools in Pakistan, like majority of the schools, they are taking everyone in the loop. Like they are whatever measures they are taking and whatever things they are doing in the school, they are uploading it on their websites. They are uploading it on their Insta, on their Facebook. So everybody knows that what they are preparing, and they are informing the parents through email. They are having meetings with the parent council as well. So everything is clear to the parents that their children will be safe once they will be back to school. So they are informing them through all the social media, and they are uploading everything every single day. Whatever things they are doing, they are uploading it on their website and Facebook and Insta. And they are in contact with all the teachers. Teachers are preparing for the opening. So this is how they are taking everyone in the loop.
Very much. Thank you, Sadia. And Dr. Bassam?
Honestly, on Miss Berna, like already mentioned, like some beautiful things about what to do with the children, because like the first thing I faced with my son, for example, like how, like washing your hands for 20 seconds. So, and then like we taught him like to sing a song that's like lasts for 20 seconds while you're washing his hands, or like play ninja, like so instead like so wearing a mask like that. So like change everything to a game, make it fun. Like, because that's, as you said, that's how children learn. So I think that's the only way to get back. Like we can tell any message, like, but just the way to like to deliver that message, it matters, honestly.
Right.
We already saw that like in different countries, like in different, like this, like for example, different governments gave the same message but in a different way that scared the public or ensured them. So we do the same thing, starting with our family, then our school, then like the big organization, and so on. So.
Right, and as I'm mindful of time, we probably have another 3 or 4 minutes left before I go to my last question. So Bassam, I'm just going to request you to expand on, the worries and concerns that people have. What are some of the ideas you have to, what are some of your tips to combat these worries? And then anybody, especially, there are just so many things people are worried about, but what are some of your solutions or tips? I know you've been dropping these nuggets of wisdom along the way, but specifically, to address people's worries and concerns, what do you have? And while you're doing that, if I may request Berna and Sadia to look at the questions in the chat, and you can send a private answer so that people get, so this, whoever's asked the question will get a response. I've tried responding to 2 questions myself, but while Bassam is asking, if you could please respond to those questions, that will be useful.
Honestly, that's the first, like in general, with any anxiety or worry, we need to see like things step by step, like see what we can do now and then next and next, not to see the whole thing together. Like for example, like our like sons and daughters going back to school, let's see just the first day how we're going back, then the next, and so on. Not to see like the whole year and the vaccine and our money issues like all together. No, just take one piece at a time. The other thing is having a clear system, like and like that's already happened. Like because honestly, I was worried about my son going back to school, and when I received an email about the protocols and guidelines for KHDA, like, and then that assured me and assured the whole family, because there's a clear system. So we do that the same thing, like with our family, and the same thing like with our staff also. The other thing is to know when we need help or our children need help, to recognize that. Because some things just like can be handled easily by simple communication or like just like some time, one-to-one time with our children, like just to acknowledge their worries or answer them, and then like to realize when we need no, I need more help, so it doesn't like grow further and further from that. I think basically it's just that. So it's like reassurance and communication. And I think always have like as you said, like a smile costs nothing but can mean a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Basam. I thought that was very useful. In fact, I wrote it down myself. And the last question for the day, before Mr. Magnus comes in to wrap this up, really, is what are some of the lessons learned? What is it that I wish I knew then that I know now? What worked? What didn't work? Who'd like to go first?
I'm happy to go first. I think one of the biggest things I wish we all knew beforehand was, firstly, how long this was going to take to get back to a state of normality, the new normal, as we call it. But I think one of the biggest lessons we've learned through this is that not only are our teachers and our children so resilient and incredibly innovative in terms of how they approach their own self-learning and their own responsibility in terms of their learning. That's one of the biggest things that we've learned, is how actual people pull together, how resilient they are. What I wish we knew beforehand, on a serious note, is the real impact of this in terms of the children's learning. So obviously when they come back in September, as you know, the GCSE students, they didn't write exams. The A-level students didn't write exams. It's all based now on teacher evaluation and mock exams. And the impact of that on the children, I think, is going to be longer lasting than we realize. But I also wish we knew beforehand to prepare our children to be able to learn online. This was a big learning curve for us, especially in the UK schools, where we don't have bring your own device and we don't really use technology in the same way as we did when I was in Dubai. So that was a big thing for us. That's one of the big lessons. I also wish we knew beforehand how to support our families better. I think going back to where one of my friends in the US, what they did was they did drive-by visits. So they would drive by the most vulnerable students, stay in the car and kind of shout over the driveway just to check in with their children and things like that. I think those were the lessons that we needed to learn, but I think we were ill prepared. Talking about the UK and where I come from, in terms of this, the technology bit of this, but we are better now. This time we'll know.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Berna. In fact, on the flip side, I thought the reason why UAE slipped in so easily into this whole, online learning piece was because I think there was an ecosystem already in existence, a digital ecosystem. There was a lot of training and schools had invested a lot, the government had invested a lot in technology. But as we all know, it's never technology that drives it. It's always the teacher behind. It's always the pedagogy. It's always the teacher who drives it. And I think, but because the technology piece was already in place, the adaption, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not sure, but that came that much easier. So yeah, I kind of hear you there. And I love the drive-by piece. Some of the Dubai teachers as well, students in one of our schools drove by and wished the teacher. That was so awesome. And of course, teachers reciprocated. So that was really awesome. Sadia, Basam, any thoughts?
Yeah. I think what we have learned is we need to rethink of our idea of schooling, because for us, schooling means a physical structure where the learners are involved and they are coming every day. So we need to rethink of that idea of schooling. It can be e-learning now. I think majority of the people now will go for e-learning. Why not? So this is something I think we have learned and we need to change our mind now.
Absolutely. It's a mindset shift, isn't it? Absolutely. Well said, Sadia. Thank you, Basam. You're on mute, Basam. You're on mute.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have much to add on what you already said. Like, that's so beautiful. It's exactly because I think like that was one of the main things to change to electronics, even to work from home. It's not just like for students, like all the work, like showed us possibilities that we didn't think of before, honestly. And so I think that's like what humans are. We change, we adapt, and like they're like resilience and like we keep improving.
Right, wonderful. And I think Magnus is back to remind us of the time to give us feedback, and then I will do a quick wrap up. Thank you, Magnus.
Thank you so much, Nargesh. We're almost out of time. I know that for everyone. If I could please if you could just hang on for a few more minutes, we're going to have a feedback session. I will share my screen here. So if everybody could please, again, stay on. Those who are new, haven't logged on to menti.com, please do that. Use the Menti code 685559. And if you could please answer the question that you see in front of you, we'd really appreciate that. I'll give you 30 seconds to do that. So
we can't see the question yet, Magnus. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think if you log on, you'll see the question, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. The code is 685559. Okie dokie. I will move on to the next slide. So, slide not active. Now, let's see. What I enjoyed most about this webinar. I'd appreciate if you could all fill that out. What did you enjoy most about this webinar? Was it insightful? Did it teach you any new information? Are there any new tools and techniques that you're going to take away? Anything that you're going to use in the classroom, in the school? So the first, what we should watch out for. Yeah, there are many things we can watch out for. The UK experience was great. That's wonderful to see. Getting first-hand information from someone who has experienced it. Absolutely. One person got answers to his or her questions. That's wonderful. The different ways of welcoming students. Hearing from Berna about practical solutions. Yeah, Berna has given some fantastic solutions here. Sharing of best practices and experience. Again, recommendations given by Berna. That's wonderful. Experience shared by colleagues abroad show that it is possible to adjust to the new situation. Berna is just amazing. Fantastic. Again, sharing of best practices, straight from the heart, honest, real life experiences. That is wonderful. The practicality of understanding what can be used and done when schools reopen. That's wonderful. Key considerations, schools reopening. Knowing that we are all in the same boat. It was satisfying. Absolutely, we're all in the same boat. But we're stronger together. Straight from the heart, honest, real. Yeah, different ideas about back to school. Use of pillowcase, pillow cover as bags. No uniforms. Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. We're now going to move on to the next question. What will be the first thing you do with well-being at heart to make the return to school for you and your children the best it can be? So what are some of the practical ideas and solutions that we've just heard? Will you allow yourself to possibly pause, to breathe, to have a cup of tea perhaps? Would you create a forum for your children to voice their worries and fears? Any specific tips to adopt? Will you wave more to your students? Would you sing songs? Would you go, first thing you do, would that be to go into the school and check out the look and the feel? What would you do? So preparation to adapt new normal, finding time to talk to colleagues, to your students, smile and be positive, absolutely. That always helps. Communication is a strong point here for everyone. For us as KHDA to communicate to all our stakeholders, but for our stakeholders to communicate between each other. make students feel more comfortable, laugh with them, absolutely. Promote a sense of calmness and happiness, very important. Honest conversation with students and parents, that's very important. Welcome everyone with a smile and try to dispel any fears, absolutely. I will look after my team. If my team are well, then this will pass on to the students. Contact with parents is very important, absolutely. Maybe perhaps adopt some of Berna's ideas regarding, Zoom calls or Teams calls with parents and phone calls with parents. Also with students prior to coming back to school, for sure. Be cool, absolutely. Be cool is the best. Ensure health and safety, peer interaction sessions and laughter sessions, orientation sessions for sure with parents and students before we start the session. And of course, take care of, Take care of teachers' well-being, absolutely. Teachers' well-being is very important. Motivate and inspire students. Everything is normal. We need to adapt to it. Be flexible. Be happy. You're on the right track. Absolutely. A smile on face. Always keep the cool. Let the students be comfortable. Regular emotional check-in. Absolutely. Wear mask with a smile. Yep. However that works, I'm not sure. Pray for the safety of each and every one of us. Yeah. Be cool and stay in this shift process. Don't transmit the anxiety to younger ones. Narrate constructive and positive COVID-19 stories. Have a virtual wit session with the parents. Make students relax with warm and welcoming and a big smile. Okay, thank you everyone so much for your feedback. I'll leave you with this slide here in case there is anyone else who needs more information. We have, KHJ has set up something called In This Together, which I'm sure you're familiar with, for future webinars and for any other future information regarding what KHJ is doing. Please go ahead and log on to that. We also have the What Works page. As you're probably all familiar, we have for many, many years within KHJ hosted What Works seminars, 2 times a year, where we've celebrated what teachers are doing fantastic in classrooms. Lastly, I wish to thank Nargish and the invited guests today, Berna from Sherfield School in the UK, and Sadia from Kant Public School, EYFS Campus Clifton in Karachi, Pakistan, and our psychologist, Dr. Bassam Aysar Diya from DHA's Command and Control Center. For further information or comments, again, please visit these websites. But for me, it's bye-bye for now, and I will simply hand over the word to Nargish for her closing remarks. So,
thank you. Thank you very much, Magnus. And
thank you. I will stop sharing.
Right. It's uncertain times. It's exciting times. We have never witnessed something like this in our lifetimes, and we probably won't witness it again. And I think either we can crib and complain and cry, or we can really be, we can embrace the situation. They say it's not change that is the problem, it's resistance to change. And there will be many people saying, why do we need to start schools again? It's safer to sit at home. But obviously, there's a lot of thought that's gone into this. Schools reopening is causing anxiety, yes it is, but it's also providing an opportunity for educators to reimagine the way they're going to have teaching and learning and pedagogy and assessment and a different lens on well-being. So I think that rather than crib and cry and complain, let's do what Berna and her team did, and let's just be positive about the situation. And here's to a wonderful reopening of our schools. I'm sure we're all going to put our thinking hats on, come up with amazing solutions to the problems we face, and our children are going to benefit. I think if we keep that as the focus, that whatever we're doing is not for personal glory, it's not for the school, it's for our children, it's for the generation of the future. They are going to inherit the earth from us, and I think for them, that the least we can do is be our positive selves. really put thought to what we're doing and craft experiences for them that will make them amazing human beings, adaptive, resilient, and absolutely ready, future ready. And with that, I'd like to say thank you once again to the KHDA team. I know Maya, Nada, Magnus have been working hard behind the scenes, and the IT team. Thank you so much for the support for this. We almost kind of had a hiccup when Berna couldn't join us. Her laptop crashed. She had to join through. Please thank your husband for having his laptop ready because you've added great value. Thank you, Sadia. You've added great value too. And thank you so much, Basam. Good night and God bless.
Thank you so much.